If you miss a live session, you can go back at any time to watch on demand. Go to Watch Replays and click on the session that you want to view. Have you created your own event agenda and swap card? Visit the Agenda and Watch Replay tabs to add sessions that interest you to your own event. You can go back to My Event to revisit any bookmarked sessions, sponsors, and items. We want to make sure that you're connecting with our industry-leading sponsors. You can interact with them by visiting the Booths and the Sponsor tab. You can also bookmark sponsors or add items to your event to view later. Sponsors have uploaded extra materials for attendees. Make sure to visit sponsors that interest you to chat with one of their team members or save documents for later. We have dedicated meeting slots set up for break times between sessions. Continue the discussion by requesting meetings from others in the Swap Card platform. Schedule a meeting with another attendee or a sponsor by visiting their page. The panelists and speakers will be addressing your questions live during the stream. During the stream, use the question tab to ask your questions early in the presentation. Go to the poll tab to answer polls that will be discussed during the live stream. If you need help navigating Swap Card, please reach out to our team by mentioning @Parks Associates in the chat box or by contacting one of our team members via our company page. Hello, we're excited to welcome you to Smart Energy Summit. For decades, Parks Associates has studied the impact of technology on the consumer and utility markets. Smart Energy Summit Engaging the Consumer addresses the evolution of these markets, the impact of COVID-19 on energy management programs, and new opportunities to drive engagement in utility-sponsored programs. COVID-19, along with a growing focus on green energy solutions, has added new drivers to adoption of energy management products at home, as well as new interest in solar, electric vehicles, and other solutions that will help households save energy and become more self-sufficient. At Smart Energy Summit, we'll present our latest consumer research showing the impact of COVID-19 on attitudes and usage regarding energy at home, as well as the expansion and monetization of energy management and other energy-focused offerings through consumer engagement, new business models, unique partnerships, and innovative technologies. Thank you for joining us at Smart Energy Summit. Welcome back. I'm excited to lead the next and final conversation of the year for our 12th annual Smart Energy Summit. Again, my name is Elizabeth Parks, and I'm the president of Parks Associates, and I want to personally thank you all for your attention and support of this year's event that we've been hosting all year long, and especially to Grid4C for their sponsorship of today's session focused on energy efficiency and demand response programs. It's not clicking. Thank you. Here's a quick view of what's happening today. I'm going to share some of our latest data and then introduce Patrice Samuels, our Senior Manager of Market Research, who will be introducing our visionary speaker from CPS Energy. Following that, we'll come back for a conversation with Hannah Bascom from Google Nest, and then an interactive panel discussion moderated by Patrice. I want to give a big shout out to our sponsors. We love your support and appreciate the dedication to bringing the industry together to learn and share throughout the year. Also, I want to thank our sponsors who share information with their members and audience about the topics, speakers, and the research that we highlight in this event. We have talked a lot this year about energy and the residential environment. This last session is so important because it highlights the shift that's happening, where the consumer can be an active participant in energy efficiency and usage, and also where the utilities can help manage the load on the grid through demand response. For next year, we're looking forward to being back in person in Texas in February. Please watch for our announcements about our in-person event
and our virtual sessions that we'll continue to host throughout the year. So let's dive into what consumers think about demand response. I'm going to expand on what Chris noted earlier and share more about the stacking of smart home devices, how energy is a trigger for adoption of these devices, and share the increased growth of extreme energy savings actions and perceptions of utility control. So let's first start out and consider smart home owners. Overall, 36% of broadband households own a smart home device, and consumers are now buying from retail more than they ever have, attributed to lower prices, marketing from tech giants on new solutions like doorbells and cameras, and the integration of devices through smart speakers and voice control as a user interface. The phenomenon of smart home device stacking has truly continued in earnest. The experience totally matters for consumers and drives consumers to buy more. Consumers who already own a smart home device are the ones purchasing more. Currently, 17% of smart home device owners have 5 or more devices, and we refer to these two groups of segments as power and superpower users. Energy devices are among some of the most popular smart home devices, and smart thermostat adoption has risen in the past 15 years since they were introduced in 2008, but adoption has only reached 11%. Our survey data of 10,000 households over many years is now bouncing between 11 and 13% adoption. Smart lighting products are also popular, and this category contains some of the least expensive smart home devices on the market, smart light bulbs and plugs. These fairly inexpensive devices are important to note because they offer an opportunity to become incorporated pretty easily into a group of smart home devices and/or become an add-on product for cross-promotional opportunities with other device makers. Overall, these connected devices enable consumers to control and better understand their energy consumption. They also potentially allow utilities to control them through specific utility programs. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. Smart home purchases are largely catalyst-oriented. They occur when an ad or a product placement in a store passes a consumer's view or a product goes on sale. The prevalence of impulse buys raises the importance of presentation for retailers. In-store displays and shelf placement is also really important. You can see further down the list that incentives, discounts, and rebates from energy providers are also a trigger for smart home device purchases. Energy is a big driver for these devices overall, and utilities can play an important role as a channel for consumers. You can also see insurance providers a little bit further down on the list. So let's look at what consumers are doing to be more energy efficient. We asked 10,000 households about their actions that they're taking and categorize them in 3 ways: mindful actions, home improvements, and extreme actions. According to Harvard University's study this year, Americans spent $420 billion on home improvements and repairs just in 2020. And part of these actions include changes to increase energy efficiency or savings in the home. We're going to zero in on these extreme actions, though. These are the big purchases by consumers to help reduce energy consumption and also save money. The percentage of households taking mindful actions and making energy-saving improvements has decreased slightly over the last 5 years, while the percent taking extreme measures are increasing. As Chris mentioned earlier, there have been some increases in adoption for major energy equipment purchases, including a real need. If you think of the weather-related events driving adoption, the new regulatory changes, consumers having more ways to purchase and finance equipment, and the marketing efforts around clean energy, all helping to drive more awareness for major home energy equipment. In looking more closely at demographics, we see younger respondents more likely to do energy-saving home improvements and having extreme behaviors. The energy savings actions of older residents are likely affected by limited incomes. These consumers are less likely to make major energy purchases or major home improvements, but are more likely to take the minor actions that will drive savings on monthly bills. Overall, the strongest incentive for taking minor energy savings or mindful actions is to understand the savings that's created. 59% of consumers report that knowing how much money they would save would increase their likelihood of doing one of these actions. We see the extreme actions showing up in reports too from major industry players. Generac posted $807 million in net sales in the first quarter of 2021, compared to $476 million in 2020, a 70% increase. Residential product sales more than doubled to $542 million compared to $258 million last year, a 110% leap. As noted earlier, the weather-related factors impact this greatly. Disasters with hurricanes, flooding, and fires all play a role in consumer decisions to buy a backup generator. When we look at solar and EV adoption, we can see what consumers say about not buying an EV and why they are buying solar panels. While average EV ranges expand and commutes are shorter or non-existent, range anxiety may become a lesser concern, but charging infrastructure remains immature and proprietary. EV owners are obliged to find charging stations compatible with their vehicles, a point of friction that general consumers may not tolerate. In addition, besides not intending to make the purchase, cost is the second barrier, with 22% of consumers who did not buy reporting that EVs are too expensive. Among those who do not own solar panels, the most appealing benefits are the ability to reduce their monthly energy bills, with 1/3 reporting this would increase their likelihood to purchase. Demand response also allows consumers or a utility provider to reduce or shift electricity usage through connected devices or specific utility programs. In addition to specific actions to reduce consumption, innovative utilities can provide consumers with information on daily energy usage and also programs that entice consumers to reduce their energy consumption through changed behaviors and incentives. About 1/3 of consumers receive a daily breakdown of their energy consumption, but most review it infrequently. Only 7% review their bills daily, and only 62% check once a month. The next stage to help further involve consumers is to go beyond information sharing and provide more analytics to show the savings and how energy programs can help impact overall usage. Overall, only a small minority of respondents report adopting an energy service program. You can see that these programs are 10% or less participation or enrollment. There is a lot of work for the utilities to do to increase the participation in these programs, and we'll continue tracking these as we have in the past. Overall, though, consumers express reservations about utility control programs. 41% are uncomfortable with a utility controlling their device, and 1/3 report that payments or discounts are not enough to justify participation. Comfort and convenience are also big concerns. When we ask consumers the likelihood to allow their provider to adjust household devices during periods of peak energy use, consumers do respond positively to annual credits and free devices. The most appealing is a $100 annual credit on their energy bill. A free thermostat generates slightly more interest than a $30 annual credit, and energy providers like CPS, Reliant, and Direct Energy are offering free thermostats today with certain energy plans, while others are offering customers a rebate on their smart thermostat purchase. Getting consumers more involved in these types of programs will be a challenge. Companies need to help increase awareness, familiarity, and share the value proposition of savings in a clear manner. A future of mass adoption of electric vehicles alongside continued electrification of energy in the U.S. generally threatens grid stability. The success of demand response programs may be even more critical in the future, and utilities view the ability to delay electric vehicle charging or to use the EV battery as a distributed energy resource as a promising opportunity for managing the grid in the future. This is a specific question that we asked to EV owners and also all broadband households about their willingness to allow a utility to delay charging during peak periods, which could help potentially reduce blackout situations for the utility. And you can see overall the EV owners, who represent 7% of all broadband households, show a willingness to delay charging and even let a utility provider delay charging to help stabilize the grid. However, the vast majority are not willing participants right now. A big message here is that connected devices enable new information and monitoring for consumers about their environment and specifically about their energy consumption. Consumers expect more. There's new value and experience that comes with connectivity. And in the next few years, we'll see huge strides in interoperability and integration of products and systems with an emphasis on clean energy solutions. Energy management has been a driving factor for the connected home since we've been studying it for the past 35 years. Energy is easily understood, and now with new technology, innovations, partnerships, and an increased awareness and familiarity, it will be interesting to see how much growth will happen and whether consumer awareness and familiarity will grow dramatically or slowly as it has in the past. There is a bright future ahead and lots of work for the industry to do. Thank you again for listening today. If you're interested in any of Parks Associates research, please feel free to reach out to me directly or any of our teammates. And now I look forward to introducing you to Patrice Samuels, who has been on our team studying the energy markets now for a decade. And so look forward to bringing her back on for an introduction of our visionary presentation by CPS Energy.
The Connected Consumer.
Our mission is to make life cleaner, greener, safer for consumers, for people, and greener is a big part of that. The company really focuses a lot of attention on climate change, and that not only in our operations but also in the technology that we develop. A lot of it is really used across a bunch of different sectors to help reduce climate change.
For the past 3 years, about 1/3 of broadband households have made energy-saving home improvements each year.
And so we're seeing a lot of activity in the smart building space to make those systems smarter, to deliver the right cooling and heating and airflow for people, but to use sensing to make that better than it has been in the past. We've all been in commercial buildings where it's clear the building just doesn't know we're there, right? Or doesn't know what the temperature is. It's a common frustration, and I'm happy to say that with the new technologies coming out, a lot of those problems are going to be solved.
Can you talk about how they're involved? You guys are involved in the production of clean electricity that's going to be powering our electric vehicles in the future?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think that's a super exciting space, and like I said, that's a big part of the overall energy consumption. So almost 12% of, or the greenhouse gas emissions, almost 12% globally are from vehicles. We work with many of the big automakers. We're one of the biggest suppliers in the auto industry. Many of these companies are intending to introduce a lot of new electric vehicles. It takes them years to introduce new models. And so we're often working with them on products, their new vehicles that'll come out in a few years, and across the board, tremendous number of new models that will be electric vehicles over the course of the next few years.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Patrice Samuels. I want to thank Elizabeth for that great presentation. And I also want to welcome our Visionary Insight speaker. He is Drew Higgins, the Senior Director at CPS Energy. And Drew is responsible for delivering value to customers through energy innovation. Now, today, Drew will be talking to us a little bit about demand response and trying to just shed a new light on the space that we've been talking about for a long time. So, Drew, if you're up and running, take it away.
Hey, thanks. I really appreciate it. I want to wish everyone a good afternoon. It's my pleasure to be a part of the summit. I want to thank Parks and Associates for providing this platform and the sponsors the opportunity for me to brag about my company's amazing demand response program, because that is exactly what I'm about to do. So I want everyone to hold on to their socks because there's going to be a lot of self-grandizing here, and deservedly so. Demand response, along with other energy efficiency programs, are kind of what we need going into the future. I'm going to kind of hop right into it just to make sure. But I do want to check with you, Patrice. If I go too long, my apologies, but this is a passion, so just cut me off whenever. That being said, I'm going to try to get through all my slides. A key part of kind of storytelling, and this is a story that I am telling, is making sure that you, the audience, is aware of everything that happens in terms of this program from the beginning. So first of all, a little bit about my company. CPS Energy is about 160 years old. It's the largest municipal owned utility in the U.S. and has over 1 million customers. We're number 1 in Texas for solar, and I believe we are number 6 in the nation. We also have a leading energy efficiency and conservation portfolio. It's called the Save for Tomorrow Energy Plan, also known as STEP, and it really is amazing. And I'm going to tell you kind of all about it. But first off, demand response, right? So demand response is an integral part of our STEP program. STEP was created as an alternative to building a large power plant. When you think of putting, $1 billion into a power plant that's going to have to last 50 years, that was kind of a model that really worked like 50 years ago. With the pace of technology, with the pace of change, it's very difficult to make that level of investment and expect things not to kind of change on the back end over the next 50 years, whether it's new efficiencies that are gained or just the acceptability of whatever it is you're putting into place. And so STEP was made to offset that and give us some time so we can kind of learn and get a better idea what direction kind of, the future was going in. And it was intentionally designed to meet kind of the needs of the San Antonio community around power, affordability, and our environmental goals. And the biggest takeaway from STEP was that it was highly successful in engaging the public around energy efficiency and conservation while providing financial benefits that helped a sizable portion of our community. And I'll get into that as well. So the biggest takeaway was that we actually did it, right? So we set this very ambitious goal around a number that we wanted to hit, and we hit it, right? And that's key. So that 771 megawatts was thought like that's going to be a stretch goal, and we nailed it. And we nailed it under budget, and we nailed it ahead of schedule, a full year ahead of schedule, which is incredible. And so once again, all in, the STEP program was an unmitigated success just on the objective measures alone. How much of an unmitigated success? Well, the numbers kind of speak for themselves, but I'll echo them to make sure everyone hears, right? 926 megawatts accomplished as of since fiscal year 09, nearly 2,000 homes weatherized, and we're going to get into why that's so important, and why the changing future, having programs that are nimble really help with that. But nearly 4,500 solar systems installed, and over 55,000 energy efficiency rebates distributed, which is just incredible. Insofar as DR, over half of our electric customers participate. And one thing I want to give a shout out to a couple of people, Rick Luna and Justin Chamberlain. I'm sitting here taking all the credit for this. Really, it was kind of the vision of our leadership, my boss, Rudy Garza, and my CEO, Paula Gold Williams, as well as the kind of implementers, one of the executives who really should probably be here instead of me, Rick Luna, who knows this like the back of his hand, and then our DR guru, Justin Chamberlain, he's a whiz, and he really has kind of streamlined this. So I want to give a shout out to those guys. But getting over half of our electric customers to participate, that's all on those guys, right? A lot of this comes down to just knocking on doors, making sure the marketing materials in the right place, and also showing value. So, kind of what does this look like from kind of a results? Well, residential and small business thermostats accounted for 128 megawatts of demand reduction. Large C&I customers, 119 megawatts. And then, we had mass market, which we have kind of our behavioral demand response, and we'll get into that as well. And then our newest programs involve electric vehicles. These all, when aggregated, kind of result to in our ability to flip a switch and really kind of move the needle in terms of load in our community. It's an amazing switch to have, especially, in kind of the new environment where really the weather is a huge challenge for us. Trying to predict the future and the needs inside of all of the state of Texas. This switch is so amazing to have, and has been proven just completely beneficial. And so, one of the things that I want to make sure everyone understands is that, we allow multiple ways for customers to participate. We will acquire it. Basically, we'll buy the thermostat, we'll take it to the customer's homes, we'll install it. We will mail the customer a thermostat and let them install it, or they can buy it and install it themselves. This hasn't been kind of, out of the box solution for us. This has kind of been developed over time. And with our history in DR, it's been a crawl, walk, run type of experience where, we improved our program incrementally over time. When we started off one way with not even really Wi-Fi enabled thermostats. We had 2G radio thermostats, and now where it's almost moving towards a completely bring your own thermostat program. And additionally, like smart devices during this time became more prevalent, right? And so people got the Amazon Echoes in their home, and they got more comfortable with it. And also consumers became more comfortable with installing these devices, just like they install Ring devices and other things. So kind of consumer behavior changed along the way, which enabled us to do more. But speaking on that kind of the bring your own thermostat program, you can see that year over year, our bring your own thermostat program basically increased by 50% up until last year. And so it's just been this steady increase as consumers have become more comfortable with doing kind of these simple installations. And especially, we can't have any type of conversation without mentioning kind of the pandemic, where we had issues going into customers' homes and installing these devices. Having this program enabled was critical to continue to get the benefits from the demand response program. But as we talk about benefits, I definitely want to talk about kind of the cost effectiveness of the demand response program. And I'm going to use the utility system resource cost test also known as UCT. And any score over 1.0, and by the way, this is a widely accepted scoring system. But any score of 1.0 or greater in this test indicates a cost-effective program. And the simple way of thinking of this is at 1.0, for every dollar you spend, you get $1 of value out of it. And that value can come in a multitude of ways. But when you see like the 5.86 score, that's just tremendous, right? Well, I mean, we're talking about a significant impact to our overall bottom line, not just to reasonable revenue metrics. And so, when we look at kind of behavioral response, seeing how that's that huge opportunity, one of the things that we have to kind of look at is, how are we driving adoption, and our demand response program it's kind of a consumer-based product, and so we have to look at ways of increasing the consumer's ability to access it, both from a desire as well as a usability standpoint. And so, we have an opportunity to increase it based upon its impact, and you can see now when you look at this chart, and forgive the eye chart, but we're actually increasing the value because it's so valuable. It's so valuable to CPS Energy, to our community, and to San Antonio as a whole. But then, so let's talk about kind of the behavioral demand response part of it, and this is critical because our behavior demand response programs are critically important. That we saw the UCT score. Ours is called Power Players, and on Power Player days, those are days where we want to institute this. 320,000 customers receive an email and or phone call. Hey, we're going to have a demand response day. It goes on the news, and the next day, customers receive feedback on how they performed, and we put in like you performed 5 times better or 6 times better than you did last time. But oh, by the way, your neighbors perform better than you, and it becomes really competitive. And we've seen the feedback. We know this works. There's this kind of innate competition that comes with it. And believe it or not, because of that, because it's so low of a cost in terms of implementation and such a high reward, this is kind of our Cadillac of programs, if you will. And this program yields over 24 megawatts. It's simply amazing. So can't get enough of it, and we're going to continue to see how we can expand on our behavior demand response program. But part of this also is kind of our public awareness of it. And so I'm going to go kind of into if you will, a little graphic that shows kind of on the highway. Imagine, you're driving down a highway and you see this sign, right? This is all kind of an integrated part of our, behavioral demand response, our Power Players program, our mass market programs. We also do an education portion of it. We put it in front of the eyes of our consumers in order to get that great kind of benefit from it. So that's kind of on the residential side. We also have a lot of impact kind of on the C&I side, on the industrial side. And you can see, we include 754 customer locations on the C&I side. That's office buildings, hospitality, retail, manufacturing. Additionally, education. We have school districts that participate to great value. It's just key. If you're running a demand response program, you have to have something for every single segment and every single level, and not just because of the benefits, just because it allows for that span of participation where it's self-reinforcing, and also you get that wide swath of community participation. And so another way you can look at this, if we look at this performance by segment, you can see that the kind of swath of participation is very kind of even, right? And office buildings, hospitalities, and retails are all great participators in the program. So now let's talk about kind of what's next, and this is key. because all programs go through a life cycle of peaking, and then you have to figure out how do you continue to engage, how do you continue to drive value. And one of those ways is with electric vehicles and our off-peak rewards programs for EV offerings. Now, as EVs grow, and actually, EVs are a passion of mine. I run our EV program here at CPS Energy. As EVs grow, they're expected to be a problem. And by problem, I mean that they will eventually provide a load that we can't fulfill with our current generation. And that's not just CPS Energy, that's kind of across the world, not even the United States. However, for the short term, we have enough generation, especially based upon documented charging behaviors from customers, to more than meet the demands through probably 35. That being said, we need to start learning now how to influence charging behaviors to make sure that customers and consumers participate in our overall energy economy in a way that's beneficial not only to themselves, but to the community, to the city, and to our utility. And this is critically important because of the thing I said first, which is, it's going to take a substantial amount more load, 36% more than we have right now. And that's not withstanding all the load all the generation that's going to be coming off the grid, right? So our two EV programs, we have a Smart Rewards and an off-peak program, allow for customers to enroll. One basically says, we will cut you a check if you don't charge on peak. And the other says, if you give us the ability to control your charger, then we will give you a discount. And we've seen great results from it. We noticed that 86% of the customers participating don't do any charging on peak. And we've had a couple of days where we have had to move the needle on their charger a little bit, and we're still getting those results. But so far, at this point, it appears as if this is a very effective means of driving behavior through carrots, right? This is much less a stick. This is like something easy and accessible for everyone to do. Now, we've kind of talked about the programs, and we talked about kind of the offerings. I kind of want to show you the results of it. And I'm going to go to an event that happened last February in Texas, and that was Winter Storm Uri. And Winter Storm Uri is critical here because this is kind of these programs in action, right? And so during Winter Storm Uri, CPS Energy continuously deployed various load shedding programs between the evenings of February 14th and February 17th. We had no choice, right? This was an ERCOT mandate. We had to figure out how to get our load down. That being said, we were able to activate 140,000 thermostats, and we were able to push a 2-degree setback for our customers, which made a huge difference, right? So 93% of thermostats enrolled in the Wi-Fi thermostats reward were available for dispatch, and we utilized them. And I'm going to show you the results because it's significant. And as you can see here, and we're still doing some calculations, but just amazing, right? So we were able to significantly bump kind of our load at the time, which, once again, it's beneficial for the consumer, it's beneficial for the city, and it's beneficial for CPS Energy. And you can see over those days the number of thermostats that were engaged. And this is a partnership between the community and the utility, and it just had a significant impact. And so, we learned a lot from that. And once again, with the guidance of our leadership, we're expanding our programs in demand response. And so, we're looking at what are the next level market objectives. And as you can see, like we always have the ability of reducing the overall peak, the 4CP for CPS Energy, which lowers cost for everyone. So if you're wondering, like, how can CPS Energy pay, the cost for consumers to have these thermostats? Well, it's easy because at the end of the day, when we lower that 4CP, it's cheaper for everyone. And especially over time, the rewards just kind of build on themselves. And then the new thing is, in case of emergency, this is kind of a break glass switch that we can also utilize. And so with that break glass switch, we want to look at kind of the new emergency, which is the winter peak, which before last year we really didn't have. And so we're going to be expanding our winter DR programs. It's limited at this point, but we're going to see what we can do in order to continue to grow it and build it and make it more palatable and more acceptable. But at the end of the day, we know that DR programs work, and we're going to make sure that we have those DR capabilities. And then, just kind of a couple of things in closing. One of the things, if you're running a DR program and building it for the future, you have to do is you have to be ready to respond, right? And so when the customer calls, we pick up no matter what. And if they feel that, that the thermostat set points that we set have messed up their AC system, or they think we've done it and we haven't, we want to make sure that we promptly answer those questions. We want to be as transparent as possible with our programs. We do these huge announcements. We have messages that actually show up in the thermostat as well as on TV and in text messages. And so we will never have a program that's kind of behind the scenes. It's going to be as upfront as possible. Now, when we look to the future, demand response is going to fit into our overall portfolio of programs that include DER. So you can see this incorporated with battery storage, once again, EVs, even more so in terms of overall home management systems. DR is kind of setting the template for how we're going to respond in the future. We come to a grid where, we don't want to build any new power plants. We want to manage kind of our assets as they are to the greatest extent possible and get that maximum amount of value from it. That's the long vision, right? When we have a substantial amount of solar in homes, we have a substantial amount of battery storage in homes, or we can mix and match between dispatchable generation at the utility scale to generation at the consumer and residential scale in order to provide a balanced, optimized grid that's affordable and reliable for everyone. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Patrice. Thank you very much for allowing me to basically brag about this program I love, and I can't wait to answer your questions.
Great presentation, Drew. Thank you so much. So I do have a number of questions, and the first one is, so I was just really checking out some of the slides that you had in the very beginning, and it seems like, CPS Energy has had what I would describe as unusual growth in demand response adoption. And of course, you mentioned in the early part of your presentation as well that, there's been a lot of just knocking on doors and showing value. So, I've been looking on the data on our end, and, we've been seeing, fairly consistent adoption rates for demand response programs. And when we do see growth, it's really just slight or incremental growth. So we're really not seeing those numbers. So is the secret really knocking on doors and explaining the value? I know you mentioned some behavioral programs as well, but what is it that's really helping to drive the adoption of your programs?
Well, so a lot of it is going to be based upon anecdotal evidence, but from my observations, it's a free thermostat, first of all, right? And so a lot of this you have to get in front of the smart thermostat craze. And like I said, Justin Chamberlain and Rick Luna really, when they saw the opportunity, they struck while the iron was hot, and they got those free thermostats. Kind of like, hey, look, if you want a Nest thermostat, you can get one free. Consumers generally don't balk at free stuff, and this is one of those cases where they didn't. I will say, in the current environment, that might be a little hesitancy about putting smart devices in homes, but I think they're so ubiquitous at this point, it's still a great selling point, right? And I know Nest has a new version out, and they're becoming more integrated with other themes in the home. And so that's the first thing. The second thing is, especially around the behavioral demand response program, it is simply putting it out there to the consumer, letting them play with it, letting them experience it, understand that, and this goes back to that open communication where you're letting them know we're not adjusting your thermostat. This is all on you. But what you're allowing us to do is show you how you performed and let you know how you're helping your community. That had a lot of impact. And I will say some of it is because San Antonio is, we're the seventh largest city in the United States, but we feel like a small town, and community means a lot to us, which both means in terms of how we band together, but also, we have a natural competitive nature in the city. I mean, people talk about what high schools they come, they're in their 50s, what high school they graduated from. So there's this natural competitiveness amongst neighborhoods and individuals in those neighborhoods. And so I would implore anyone who's doing a program to figure out how to kind of stoke that competitive nature, or if it's not competitive, where they live, maybe even be a more communicative approach where, the neighborhoods banding together to hit a common goal. I will say this, it has to be right sized for the community.
On a really important point, which is you change the messaging around the importance of how this impacts your community. And that also is leading me to think of the impact of COVID-19. It's an important one I want to touch on. So, a lot of what comes with that is that more people are attending school from home and more people are working from home. So of course, there are also, I would say, business continuity implications there, making sure that, businesses can continue running, and, all of that does impact the community. So I was just thinking as you spoke, is COVID-19 really having an impact, or is it having an impact at all on consumer willingness to participate in these programs? Has there been any messaging around that to drive adoption of these programs?
Yes, and so especially on the kind of commercial side, right, where we're losing some capacity on the commercial side just because office buildings aren't filled and thermostat set points aren't there to be reduced. On the residential side, I'd say it's almost enhanced. Those thermostat set points are a little bit lower than they normally are in the summer, a little bit higher than they are in the winter because people are home all the time, right? And so you have the ability, if you're going to call a DR event, inform people ahead of time it's going to happen. Let them kind of, overcool their house or overwarm their house. And then when the time comes, they have that capacity to release that load, and it has more of a significant impact. So, we're losing some commercial, but we're gaining some in residential. And I say net, it's probably a pretty good balance. We see opportunities in here to do more maybe on the residential side. But all in all, looking at last year, we did pretty well. And it was right around where we were the year before. So in a COVID environment, we're going to count that as a win.
So, but are you using the message at all? Is it a part of the message that, with these people now working from home, it's important to have this continuity? Is it a part of the message, or, you're just bearing in mind that everybody's cognizant of what's going on?
Yeah, so, it doesn't really have to be a part of the message, because our message is not about them being home. Our message is about saving energy, right? And so we kind of stay on topic. Like, you're at home, it's 104 degrees outside, and I know you have your thermostat set to 68. I get it. But we're going to move your set point a little bit for a couple of hours, and you're going to help out everybody. And so that message really hasn't changed. The difference being, before, they weren't home when we did that, right? Before, maybe they were coming home from work and it had less capture, but now they're more aware. Everyone's seen in the news articles where people are like, the utility moved my thermostat without my permission. We don't want that to happen. So what we do is we make sure we over communicate. And I do think that's more important in the COVID environment because, as I said before, from a residential perspective, the impact is greater.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, thank you so much. That was a great presentation. I really enjoyed it. Thanks for, shedding some new light and helping a lot of us to take a new look at demand response. So thank you again, Drew. We're now going to take a quick pause as we transition to our executive spotlight. And this will be led by Elizabeth Park. So she'll be coming back in to lead that. And it will feature Google Nest. So stay tuned for that. We'll be back shortly.
Great, and welcome back. What an awesome presentation from Drew. I love that energy. Thanks so much for that. And now it's my pleasure to have Hannah Bascom, Head of Energy Partnerships from Google Nest, join us virtually to share more about the Google Nest Renew initiative and her perspective on where we are in the market development with energy management solutions. We have 30 minutes to talk about consumer devices, energy efficiency, the role of educating the consumer about energy management, growth factors for demand response, and partnerships and integration. Please be sure to send your questions along the way in the chat so that we can ask them as we go. And Hannah, thank you again for joining us and welcome. Let's hear from you on what your role is and some of the latest on the Google Nest Renew initiative.
Thanks so much, Elizabeth. Happy to be here. As you noted, I am head of energy partnerships for Google Nest, which means I work with utilities, dereg energy providers, other energy service providers to stand up partnerships in service of new products and services like Nest Renew. So I've been part of the Nest family for almost 8 years now, come from a utility background before that, and have had the great pleasure to help grow some of the programs like Drew was just talking about, our Rush Hour Rewards Demand Response Program, a lot of thermostat rebate programs across the country. And so I'm delighted to be here today to talk a little bit about Nest Renew.
Again for joining us. Well, let's dive right in and talk about some of the factors that are driving growth as well as some of the barriers. So let's start out in talking about smart thermostats. Can you share with us what you think some of the biggest drivers are for increased adoption? And this is, again, keeping in mind that we've been sitting at that 11 to 13% mark. So it's exciting to see new initiatives like you all have that could really end up moving that mark there.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the major barriers to adoption, of course, is price point. Up until recently, smart thermostats were seen as a more premium product, and rebates and other energy company incentives have really been helpful. Drew mentioned the free thermostat that CPS offers. So those sorts of programs really do help to bring down the cost of adoption, and especially now that there are a few lower price models that have just come out over the past 6 or 9 months. Oftentimes people can get those devices for free. And so as people are out thinking about home upgrades, we were all at home for forever with COVID, right? A smart thermostat has been a really easy way to make a simple upgrade that helps save a lot of energy in your home. And also, they're much more attractive than your kind of old school beige box, right? So those kinds of initiatives and collaborations with providers in the industry have been really crucial. And also just continuing to let customers know that they can install them themselves in many instances, and also educating professional installers on how easy it is to swap these things out. So when customers want a do-it-for-me solution, those are readily available too.
That's great. Thanks for that input, and really interesting on the DIY side. If we can just jump on that real quick, because that has been a great thing for consumers and ending up blurring the lines in the smart home space, particularly with home security solutions. And so can we go, you mentioned the installation side with consumers and doing it themselves. So do you think this is where things are headed with a thermostat, that consumers will opt for the do-it-themselves type of installation? Or do you think professional services are going to continue, being a big driver, especially around the channel that consumers are getting these devices from?
It's going to be a both and strategy, honestly. A lot of smart thermostats are designed so that it is very easy for consumers to swap these out themselves. But we also know that there are millions of new HVAC systems sold every year. And so having those also paired with a smart device is going to be really important. And not everybody is really handy or feels comfortable doing a smart installation. So wanting to make sure, as we said, that we have kind of robust channel and education and incentives for installers to install more efficient products is absolutely crucial, alongside of the easy videos and phone numbers you can call as a consumer that help you do it yourself. So I think it will be, it really does take both those strategies to get where we need to go.
Okay, great. And we certainly at Parks Associates view the DIY space as an and, not an or. This is going to help expand the market overall and
Yeah.
get closer to mass market adoption all around. You bring up that great point about choice, and we think that is also around all technology services is really becoming a big driver, personalization and meeting the consumer where they're at, whether we're talking about security, energy, or let's say OTT video services. Let's move over into the partnerships that you have with utilities, and we just got to hear from Drew, so that was great that he dropped in some of what you all are working on. Are there any other specific partnerships that you want to highlight and share some of those successes with us?
Sure. So Nest has been partnering with a variety of energy providers almost since the very beginning. So actually the Nest thermostat just had its 10th birthday, which is a great celebration for those of us in the energy world. And we launched our first demand response programs in 2013. And even before that, there were lots of rebates that we were helping to raise awareness for and get customers connected with. And so we have a proud heritage as part of our DNA to increase collaboration there. So today we have our demand response program, Rush Hour Rewards, available through 8 DERMS partners in about 80 utility territories. And then, as I noted, we have this new initiative, Nest Renew, which is a service that we launched that helps make it easier for customers to choose clean energy right from home. And we were super excited to have a variety of utilities side by side with us as we kind of took a leap into this space, because those innovative partners have the same vision as we do for a cleaner future, a more connected home, and a more ultimately flexible and resilient grid, and being able to really bring all those things together. So for us at Google Nest, it's really always been important to be a catalyst for the market, helping to connect customers with the programs that are out there and helping utilities and other service providers to ultimately reach their energy savings goals. So we're continuing to build on that and really excited for this next chapter.
That's great, and certainly a vested interest from your side as well as the utilities to create an ease for consumers to adopt these products, install them, and then gain the benefits of the monitoring, especially on energy savings. And so that really gets into our next topic about value, experience, and education. I loved getting on the Google site and reading some about your initiative. It's very consumer friendly. If you were not in the industry, you could easily understand the value that you all are sharing through this new program. What are some of the other things that Google is doing to create an awareness around this Nest Renew initiative? And then also want to jump into the monthly fees that come along with that.
Yeah. So to sort of take a step back, for us, since the beginning, as I noted, energy savings has really been core to the Nest mission. And we were hearing from our customers that they really want to do more to save energy and to be engaged in their energy usage. Climate change, as probably most folks on this webinar are familiar with, is now more widely recognized. We all have lived weather that is abnormal relative to when we were kids. And so people are starting to be more alarmed and want to take action. But the challenge has always been, it's hard to do that. And it's hard to know if running around and unplugging things or turning off the lights is really ultimately having an impact. So we've done a lot of research with our customers and continually hear from them, I want to do more, but I also want it to be easy and I want to know that it makes a difference. And so that was sort of one of the core the core premises as we were developing Nest Renew. Google also has had a really longstanding, legacy of being a leader in the climate change space. And so we also wanted to help to accelerate that and enable our customers to be more active participants. So that was sort of the genesis of Nest Renew, wanting to make sure that it could be a mass market product. So you noted that there is a premium tier, which we're rolling out by invitation only in select markets in the coming months. But the base tier will be available nationwide. We're also kind of rolling out in phases, but that will be free to everybody. All compatible Nest thermostats will be able to enroll in this and get new, basically superpowers for their thermostat to help them either consume a little bit less energy when the grid is more carbon intensive, or when their peak rate, their TOU rate might be more expensive. So it's those sorts of little changes that we can help to automate that in aggregate, when we all do a little bit together, really can add up to a lot.
Well, I love that superpowers for their thermostat. That's awesome. And yeah, bringing in climate change and the fact that that is top of mind really for many consumers, and people really looking to contribute to the overall environment and the future that we all hold for ourselves and for our children and grandchildren. I did have one question though, so I'm going to interrupt from the audience. Somebody wants to know, can you name the 8 DERMS partners? Is that something you can share with us?
Yes, I should probably follow up in writing so that I don't leave anyone out, but absolutely happy to do that.
Okay, great. So we will follow up with Hannah and get that list so it's not off the top of her head. Thank you for that. Moving back to the experience and value. So electricity savings in general haven't been much because the cost isn't very much so far, but we do see those going up. So how do you think that people are going to really care more? I know you've done a lot of research in this area and testing things, but is there one thing that you can put your finger on that really makes people care?
Well, I think that people inherently do care, and particularly given what we're seeing evolve kind of in the world around us. But the thing that's hard is that everyone is busy, and taking action seems very friction filled a lot of the time. Even something as easy as getting a thermostat rebate and enrolling in a demand response program. We know historically it's really hard for customers to just buy the thing, get the proof of purchase, fill out a paper form, and then separately later on enroll in their demand response program. If instead we're able to bring all of that together so that customers are purchasing through their utility marketplace with a rebate instantly applied, with the device already coming pre-enrolled in demand response, then that helps to really drive adoption. So for us at Nest, automation has always been the thing that we believe will kind of set us free and enable us to have the biggest impact. And that's what we're building on also with Nest Renew, making these kind of micro changes to your thermostat schedule to enable you as a consumer to align to your TOU rate. It's great to manage your energy bills, but then also from a public policy perspective, the reason that these rates are going in place is that states and utilities want the peak load reduction. And studies have shown that when there is an automated device component of those programs, the results are so much greater. So I think it's those little things that, one-click enrollment, making it as frictionless as possible for customers to adopt, that will help to get to the mass market penetration that we really want.
Sure, and I can only imagine, given the utility infrastructure being perhaps antiquated with some players, and really the changes that they're looking to make to the grid is probably a lot to navigate through. So commend Google and Nest for their initiatives along the way here and being market leaders for energy efficiency. This all brings the topic of energy is a big one here at Parks, since we also talk about the smart home and the connected home space in general. So can you share how you see this initiative, with the rest of the now Google Home initiative that I saw was just recently renamed and announced, I think this week was the naming of that maybe?
Yeah, so a couple announcements or things that were kind of floating around the world this week. So one is we were talking a lot about Matter. Matter is a new connectivity standard for the smart home. So anybody who has tried previously to connect lights and smart plugs to any assistant, or bought an Amazon product and a Google product and tried to connect everything together knows that it is oftentimes a fraught process. And Matter was created by a whole bunch of players in the ecosystem: Google, Amazon, Samsung, Apple, Zigbee, and others, to enable a seamless standard for customers out of box to be able to pair their devices to whichever ecosystem they want. And those connections will also be self-healing and reinforcing, so that if I did this. I changed my Wi-Fi password, and then I spent literally 2 weeks trying to reconnect all the devices in my house. So those sorts of things we want to make a lot easier, and Matter is going to help us really accelerate forward. That's kind of one piece of it. But then, of course, as we have more devices that are connected in the home, it will also enable it to bring more to the grid, bring more to energy services. So I was super interested to see the chart Drew showed about during URI, the results that the demand response programs had. So traditionally, they hadn't been a winter peaking system, and now they're really driving demand response participation year round. And so I think that those sorts of programs, as we see these more extreme weather events, and as there's more renewables on the grid with intermittency issues, those resources are going to be a very important part of the portfolio to balance everything out. So as we have more devices in the home, we're able to bring more load to bear, and ultimately, consumer engagement and making it as easy as possible to participate is going to be really a linchpin in all of that.
Okay, great. Thanks for that explanation on Matter. That's of great interest to our audience, and definitely something that we're tracking closely. Looking forward to additional announcements in 2022. So you mentioned interoperability and integration as this big thing in general within the connected home, and of course that ties into energy. What are some of the other growth factors that could come into play? The supply chain. You have any comments on how that could be impacting things in the months and potentially years to come?
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually trying to do a house renovation right now, so the supply chain issues are really near and dear to my heart. But I think that supply chain, certainly when people are having to wait months and months to order to see their products fulfilled, or the processing permits to get solar or batteries or EVs installed, all of those things definitely can hinder adoption. And also just making it easy for customers to buy bundles of products that will work well with their home. That for me has been also an issue. Just knowing, what is the right HVAC system that I should choose when I'm upgrading based on my consumption patterns. And then, of course, the logistics of having to install it in my house. All of those things, I think that we collectively, the big we, the energy industry, in combination with professional installers and other parties that are hand in hand with us through this, have a really big opportunity in helping to accelerate this, next generation of electrification and new devices in homes.
Okay, great. Yep, and the supply chain, I think will hopefully things will get a little bit better, but certainly going to catch people up for the short term and figuring out some ways to navigate that. I do have a question that's come in. It's a good one. What are some ways people that don't have reliable Wi-Fi can participate in a connected device program like Nest has? So how important is Wi-Fi to that experience? And if you don't have that, is there a workaround basically?
So sort of yes and no. Wi-Fi is for example, demand response programs, essential because you need a way for the signal to get to the home. And so it's not that there will never be any other kind of protocol that could be leveraged, but I think that Wi-Fi really is pervasive for that. However, my parents' house, horrible Wi-Fi. And so they don't need continual Wi-Fi reliably all the time to get benefits, because of the standard that I mentioned before, Matter, will also have to device-to-device interconnectivity. And that mesh networking standard can also help to keep devices smart, even if there is not continual Wi-Fi connection. So it really depends on the specific use case, but we can continue to push the envelope even without, Wi-Fi coverage 100% of the time. And then just as a note, some of the versions of the Nest thermostat and other smart thermostats that are out there don't require Wi-Fi 100% of the time to realize energy savings and kind of learn your schedule and automatically save. So there's also lots of devices like that are just inherently smarter based on the brains embedded in the device.
Sure, yeah, that makes sense. And Wi-Fi, I think, and broadband connectivity in general is just becoming such a critical component for everybody's daily lives. Our research shows 74% of consumers have a home network router, and of those with broadband, 96% I think are using Wi-Fi. So the reliability of the Wi-Fi is there as a potential issue, but we also have managed service providers who are coming out and be able to allow the consumer more control of that broadband in the home. Let's talk a little bit about the cost of energy and what this is going to do. So we heard from Drew that the adoption of electric vehicles is going to increase the usage by exponentially 60 to 70%, I think is what he said. And so right now we have low energy costs in general, but we see those going higher. And so is there a balance here that's going to be found on going with a renewable energy source, but yet the cost to have that is maybe a lot more than even people might have anticipated?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think that we are at the beginning of a pretty massive transformation in the way people think about their electricity rate. So, historically, most rates have been tiered or just a flat rate. There in Texas, of course, there's kind of next generation pricing. And I think that we're seeing a lot more adoption of that across the country as well. So time of use rates in California, where I'm based in Michigan, have just become default for all residential customers. And so that is going to be, I think, something you'll see in lots of other places as well. And lots of other, differentiated pricing for electric vehicles or other kinds of electrification initiatives and bundles that customers have. And then subscription prices are also something that I know are certainly a hot topic. There's a lot of discussion as to whether or not it would be possible to have a balanced bill, same amount every month, that is connected with smart technology that then automatically shifts off of those peak times when the real cost of energy is more expensive. And so again, lots to come in the next several years on this front, and I'm excited just to have more options as a consumer myself.
Yep, absolutely. Being in Texas, I love choice on our electricity bills, and we're constantly shopping our rates around to get the best deal. The state and federal governments also play a huge role here with the utilities in incentivizing them to come up with new ways to reduce the load on the grid. So we just have a couple minutes left, so we can get you out of here on time at 3:15. But can you share a little bit of your views on these state and federal regulations and or incentives with grants that are coming potentially soon for companies?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we, in order to meet the aggressive, ambitious goals that we have as a society, as the world in terms of climate change, we're going to need a variety of types of policies, some of them federal, some of them state and local. And then we also need to get consumers more engaged in the fight as well. And so for us at Google, we really support comprehensive climate policy and are in favor of a lot of the initiatives that are being discussed around renewables and electrification. But I'm not going to, there's so, we could spend many more days talking through this. So I'm not going to go into a lot more detail than that.
Okay, great. Yep, certainly understand that. A lot, you could go dig deep into that one. But a lot of things coming, and I think the government money that comes into play can help drive innovation and experimentation, and that leads to growth, we know, as well. So Hannah, I want to give you the opportunity to share some final thoughts on the future of energy and anything else you'd like to share with our audience. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure. I've enjoyed the conversation. And as noted just a second ago, I'm excited because it does really feel like we are at the beginning of a big transformation. And so excited to work with all the participants on this webinar and more to bring us forward as there's lots more technology and need for acceleration of innovation in this space. So thanks so much for the opportunity to chat today.
Great. Well, we appreciate you being here, and we're in full agreement that the experience is critical for the consumer, and Google is doing a lot to enhance that experience. So have a great rest of your day, and thank you again for joining us.
All right. Thanks, Elizabeth. Take care.
Great. So that was Hannah with Google Nest sharing more about the Nest Renew initiative. And we look forward to being back here in just a few minutes for our next and final session of the day. So we'll be back shortly. Thank you again.
The connected consumer.
Our mission is to make like cleaner, greener, safer for consumers, for people, and greener is a big part of that. The company really focuses a lot of attention on climate change, and that not only in our operations but also in the technology that we develop. A lot of it is really used across a bunch of different sectors to help reduce climate change.
For the past 3 years, about 1/3 of broadband households have made energy-saving home improvements each year.
And so we're seeing a lot of activity in the smart building space to make those systems smarter, to deliver the right cooling and heating and airflow for people, but to use sensing to make that better than it has been in the past. We've all been in commercial buildings where it's clear the building just doesn't know we're there, right? Or doesn't know what the temperature is. It's a common frustration, and I'm happy to say that with the new technologies coming out, a lot of those problems are going to be solved.
Can you talk about how you guys are involved in the production of clean electricity that's going to be powering our electric vehicles in the future?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think that's a super exciting space, and like I said, that's a big part of the overall energy consumption. So almost 12% or the greenhouse gas emissions, almost 12% globally are from vehicles. We work with many of the big automakers. We're one of the biggest suppliers in the auto industry. Many of these companies are intending to introduce a lot of new electric vehicles. It takes them years to introduce new models, and so we're often working with them on products, their new vehicles that'll come out in a few years, and across the board, tremendous number of new models that will be electric vehicles over the course of the next few years.
Welcome back, everyone. We are about to move into our interactive panel discussion. It is titled Engaging Consumers, Incentives, Control, and Automation. And for this panel, we'll be looking at just integrating smart technologies in energy management solutions and some of the ways in which energy providers are engaging customers with smart energy technologies and solutions. So I'm Patrice Samuels, and we're going to kick it off with some quick introductions of our panelists, and then we will get into the discussion, and then of course we'll leave some time towards the end for the audience. Now we do have a couple of polling questions as well, and you can interact with us by answering those in your live discussions tab. It's right under polls under your live discussions tab, so you can participate in that way. So without further ado, we'll kick it off with those introductions, and we will start with Erica from Energy Hub. Go ahead. Erica, can you hear us?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. That was I wasn't sure it was me or not. Okay. So thanks Patrice for having me. Do you guys have the next slide?
Yes.
Awesome. So most of you on this call probably have heard of Energy Hub, but I'll give you a brief overview of what we do and how it relates to customer engagement. Energy Hub is a DERMS provider. We have over 60 utility clients across North America. We pioneered the bring your own device model back in 2013-ish. And we work with our clients to engage customers and devices at the grid edge in service of providing grid services either to utilities or markets. And so kind of the right side of this slide is the behind the scenes using these resources to provide reliability and enable utilities to monetize the resources they build. But on the left side is all about the customer. And that is essentially my role at Energy Hub, is to figure out how we better serve both our utility clients and our end user customers. And the focus is mainly on customers who buy their own devices versus having them directly installed by the utility. So we work with thermostat partners like Emerson. James will be following me shortly, and Nest, we just heard from Hannah, as well as EV partners. So the program that Drew was talking about, that CPS Energy runs for EVs, is an Energy Hub program. So we work kind of across the device ecosystem, focusing on the devices that can bring the grid the most load and the most flexible load. With that, I'll turn it over to Steve.
Thanks, Erica. Steve, you can go ahead.
Great. Hi, I'm Steve Herbert. I'm Global Business Director for Samsung SmartThings. Thank you very much for having me here today. If you could go to the next slide. Great. I just want to talk a little bit about our product and some of the new and innovative things we're introducing to the market. So what is SmartThings? SmartThings is a smart home solution from Samsung that is cross-platform and integrated with thousands of devices from hundreds of partners that cost nothing to download. In fact, it comes preloaded on Samsung phones and tablets, so many of you have it on your phone right now. Our app and cloud are the connective tissue for all Samsung connected products, such as appliances, TVs, mobile devices, smart home products, and so much more. SmartThings enables these products, along with thousands of integrated partner products, to be controlled from anywhere and automated to work together on your behalf. SmartThings offers additional services in the app that enable amazing new capabilities, such as SmartThings Cooking for recipes and SmartThings Find for finding lost items. The newest service from SmartThings is called SmartThings Energy, and it was launched in July, which helps users break down their energy use by system in the home, seeing how much that energy costs, and it helps them create automations that save energy automatically. Ongoing development work on the platform will enable new capabilities that include monitoring solar power production, in-home battery storage, electric vehicle charging, and most importantly, providing connectivity to utilities that enables participation in demand response programs and other incentive programs that help users save money on their home. The unique thing about the SmartThings Energy proposal is that it can affect energy use across the entire home, which is a unique thing to our platform.
Steve, and certainly thank you for introducing us to SmartThings Energy. And now we'll move to James. James has come to us from Emerson. Go ahead, James.
Hi, thank you. It's nice to speak to everybody today, and good to hear the presentation from Drew on about all the customer focus. That's a big piece of what Emerson is about: customer experience, customer focus. And we're a very unique company. We are very large, do a lot of things that you probably don't realize we do. And one of the unique things about us from a thermostat, a smart thermostat perspective, is we've actually been in the industry for over 75 years making thermostats. We make a lot of the things that go in air conditioning equipment, both commercial and residential. So we really understand how to control temperature in a home, which is a strange thing to call out specifically for a thermostat provider, because that's what you're supposed to do. But our approach to the energy space is also kind of unique. Utilities are our customers on one half of our business. So we really focus on controlling generation through our Ovation power plant controls. We also recently pulled OSI into the Emerson family, and they do a lot of great things in the industry. So I think it's important to call out the fact that we're really focused on serving the industry from that perspective. The Emerson Sensi Smart Thermostats are very unique from the perspective of our approach to the space. With our utility partners, we really try to focus on enabling utilities to run their programs with as much data as they possibly could want. We have very open APIs and really focus on our partners like Energy Hub and making sure that they're successful and able to do everything that they need to do with a smart thermostat. We kind of joke with our utility clients and our integration partners that Emerson thermostats are about the closest thing that you could get to manufacturing your own thermostat because of the amount of data that we share with you. So really excited to talk about customer experience and integrating connected products into a home. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, James, and looking forward to hearing from you. Next up, we'll have Con Edison, and our speaker from Con Edison is Candace Say. Candace, are you there?
Hi, Patrice.
Perfect.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm Candace Tsai. I'm a senior planning analyst at Con Edison. I'll start out by just introducing a little bit about Con Edison. I actually work for the regulated utility, the Consolidated Edison Company of New York. We serve 3.4 million electric customers in New York City and Westchester County in New York. And we are a distribution utility, and we provide electric, gas, and steam services. I'm fortunate to work in one of the many areas of our company working toward our company's clean energy commitment. So we have efforts to empower all of our customers to meet their climate goals, whether that's accelerating energy efficiency, electrifying most building heating systems by 2050, and making all-in efforts on electric vehicles. And my experience is managing our smart home rate project, which is one of a number of recent residential rate pilots that our company is running with the goal of offering customers more ways to manage their energy use, where it's not only about how much electricity they use, but when they use it. That's important. And it's important for lowering emissions and for keeping costs low for our customers in the long term. With Smart Home Rate, we provide pricing signals that indicate when electricity supply and delivery costs are highest, and participants are provided with energy management technology that automates their home central AC load. We've run this program for about 6 months now with about 200 plus residential customers. And our goal is to collect data and really better understand how customers engage with smart technologies to reduce their energy bills. So I'm excited and looking forward to discussing some of these topics with the panel today.
Great. Thank you, Candace. And last but not least, we'll move to Mike. Mike is coming to us from Constellation. Go ahead, Mike.
Hey, Patrice. Good to see you, and thanks for having me. So Mike Waitsgrass with Constellation. I manage the innovation, growth, and digital activities for the consumer and small commercial segments of the company. And just there's a lot on this slide, so I'll just talk kind of thematically. But as you can see from the Parks research up in the upper left-hand corner, the demand for smart home products is growing, and while security always is a big driver of that, the security applications, increasingly energy is taken center stage. And so, the question is, how do we think about smart home in the context of how we can help consumers accomplish their energy goals? And it's really, kind of a holistic approach. First, I think we have to understand as an industry what the consumer's goals are and educate them on how our solutions can address their problems. So whether that's savings or carbon reduction or grid reliability, we have to put it in the context of what's important to them. Secondly, we really need to inform them with real actionable data. Things like, is their bill going to be high this month? Is their HVAC working well? Or is it about to break down? These are things that consumers really want to know. And then lastly, we really need to enable them and give them the tools to help them take action or take action for them. And at Constellation, we have a variety of programs and tools that do just that. We have a very strategic partnership with Grid4C that gives us very valuable, tools and information about early warnings on the health of our customers' HVAC. That combined with our world-class home services team helps us to address any problems that we identify in what is the largest consumer of energy in most people's homes. And ultimately the goal really here is to provide the power to act in the hands of the consumer, and ultimately that'll help us all achieve our very aggressive energy goals. So happy to participate here, Patrice, and looking forward to the conversation.
Great. Thanks, Mike. And special thanks for joining us for another Smart Energy Summit panel discussion. We really appreciate that. And with that, we'll move into the panel discussion. Now, the first question I do want to throw out to both the panel as well as the audience. So when we talk about smart home devices or we generally think of and their impact on energy savings in the home. A lot of people automatically think of the thermostat, as having the greatest potential because, of course, the HVAC system in the home uses a significant, a lot of the data that I'm saying says it uses about 50% of the home's energy consumption. So when we think about the smart devices that can save energy in the home, a lot of people automatically go to the thermostat. But, we have other, devices coming in, and appliances, smart appliances are really gaining traction in the home. We have smart light bulbs, smart plugs, all of which can be used in home energy savings. So, and as we look at the adoption of these devices too, smart thermostats have been at about 11 to 13% adoption for a few years now, but we do see where, smart light bulbs are picking up steam, and we see where smart appliances are also gaining steam. So, if we have more of those devices in the home, when we look at the overall energy saving potential of those devices, it might sort of balance out is kind of what I'm thinking. But I want to hear from you, and I want to hear from the audience about which smart devices you think have the greatest potential for energy savings. Now, for the audience, again, you can find out how to participate in the poll by looking at the poll tab in the live discussions section. So if you could just take a second to just go there and answer while I direct the question to the panel. And for the panel, let's go ahead and start with James.
Thank you. So we obviously prefer smart thermostats as the answer there, but I think there's a little bit more detail that should be added. As the prevalence of smart home technologies grow and things like integrated on-site generation like solar panels or maybe even a home battery, the technologies need to interact inside the home and provide the biggest impact possible. So we are focused on integrating with the right partners to be able to facilitate that. We've got a pretty strong partner focus. The great thing about utilizing smart thermostats for demand response and energy efficiency is most often the demand for cooling or heating is also in direct alignment with the needs of the grid. So being able to take a kind of a holistic view of how to control the thermostat and when to control it to keep the occupant comfortable, message to them when the utility actually needs a little bit of their help, and then also if they do have other technologies that could help shave or shift some load in the house, that we're interacting with those as well.
That's as well. Sorry, it seems like I was on mute there for a second, so I'll repeat the question. I was calling Mike to give some thoughts on that, and I was saying I'm almost certain that you're going to say that is the thermostats as well. But give us your thoughts. Which device do you think has the strongest potential for energy savings?
So my mic was off. I'm sorry. I was gonna say something, Patrice. I was having a little technical difficulties, but I agree with that assessment. Obviously, I mentioned it in my introduction, but there's two things I actually wanted to say on that. One is that while controlling the temperature is important in managing energy usage, it's incredible how much we're finding just inefficient HVAC is in terms of impacting energy. A lot of HVAC units are operating inefficiently for very, very simple reasons, like filters not being changed and things like that. So as I mentioned, we have a very successful partnership with Grid4C. That's really we've driven a lot of customer insights and been able to impact their energy usage from that alone. And the second thing, I think the unsung villain of energy usage in the home, surprisingly, can be the always-on appliances. Things like TVs and computers and gaming consoles and things like that. And once you have visibility into that, which through these disaggregation capabilities and smart meter analytics, you can actually tell consumers and help them to manage it through that. You're on mute again, Patrice.
Thank you so much. I was asking Candace. Candace, do you have any similar thoughts or different thoughts on that topic?
I have similar thoughts. I mean, I guess I would answer even all of the above. I mean, one of the concepts that we're trying to convey through our smart home rate program to customers is that, smart devices can, so we are making it more meaningful for them to manage energy through, seeing savings on their bills when they're shifting energy use to times when it's more cost effective. And showing them that smart devices can do this for them by automating this. And it's not only, and I think we're interested, and this is like an interesting topic, but it's not just load shifting that's important, but also demand management. In our rate, we've actually introduced demand-based components. So there's KW-based rate components, and which is new for customers. But the energy management software that we work with, it not only shifts load, but also performs demand management. So, it's avoiding a stacking AC load with regular demand peaks from the whole home. So my all of above answer is kind of along the lines of the more, I guess, devices and the more control you have over different elements in the home and different end uses in the home, the more that you can enable that demand management functionality.
Thanks. And let me just take a moment to look at what the audience is thinking. So the numbers are still coming up here. Okay, so there's a little bit of a difference. I see where the audience definitely thinks smart thermostats have the greatest potential there for energy savings, with 47% reporting that thermostats would have the greatest potential. And then smart appliances came in second at 27%. And then we have smart water heaters, which the panelists didn't mention, but the audience, that was an option given to the audience. And many of them, of course, think it has strong applications for energy savings. And then, of course, smart outlets. And of course, no one thought smart light bulbs had the greatest potential here for energy savings, even though it is one of the most highly adopted devices. I might remind everyone.
I think Patrice, just a comment on that is because they're so well penetrated right now that that the incremental impact from them is not there anymore. But when they were being adopted, there was definitely a material impact, from switching light bulbs.
Light bulbs to smart light bulbs or to LED?
LEDs really initially, was the big impact.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Patrice, if I might add, one thing that we could look at is the entire home, frankly. We're talking about individual devices, but SmartThings is a platform that integrates with all of the above. And so through SmartThings Energy, we'll actually have the ability to automate all of those systems. And if you look at appliances in particular, we have two ways to impact energy savings in the home. Samsung makes some of the most efficient appliances and heat pump, air conditioning and heating systems out there. That's one level. And then when you combine and automate those through SmartThings, you then have the additional benefit of being able to automate things like a dishwasher to not run during a demand response event or during peak rate hours, and have it automatically defer that load until after that event is over. So we're actually looking beyond an individual device to the entire system.
Great, thank you for that. And that's actually a perfect segue into the next question. I think the majority of you mentioned that it's not going to be any single device that's going to have a strong impact on energy savings, but it's how these devices interact and the automations that are created that leverage sort of all the device, sort of whole home automation for energy savings, really. So here's an opportunity to talk about some of the specific use cases that leverage these devices to save energy. So can you give some specific use cases? And if you think it's an individual device, those use cases are important too. But since you mentioned that it's really the interaction, examples showing that interaction and how it can contribute to energy savings would be very helpful. So we can kick that one off with Mike and just tell us a little bit more about those specific use cases.
So, I hate to keep coming back to the same thing, but the use case that we've seen, we've had three good examples, I guess. One is with the HVAC program, by bundling in HVAC protection and monitoring and analytics with the energy rates. We've seen a lot of adoption, a lot of customer satisfaction. We've seen a real impact on their energy efficiency. The second thing is that we're engaged in a program in the BGE territory in Maryland, which is a kind of a peak management program. It's more of a behavioral program. And so we've been able to, through a combination of incentives and insights and analytics, been able to, have an impact or measure an impact on consumers' ability to change their behavior, to, impact to shift their load. And then the last example is a pilot that we did in Annapolis, Maryland, also with BG&E, with smart home devices. And we used the usual suspect in terms of devices that would be part of a smart home platform, but we emphasized with the customers a lot of education and a lot of support. Because smart home can sometimes be a little overwhelming, in certain segments, and so we created a program that addressed a lot of those concerns, and we were able to also work with BG&E to measure the impact on energy efficiency from those programs. So we've seen several different use cases, whether it's behavioral, whether it's bundling with energy rates and other services, or utilizing smart home as a foundation.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Candace, any specific examples you can show us that have really sort of moved the needle on energy savings or is really starting to gain some traction in the home?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak from the perspective of, our specific program. We introduced a new rate. It incentivizes shifting of load, and also, demand management. So as another element, like I mentioned earlier, I mean, I guess I can speak in more general terms and also mention that, an interesting space is with EV charging and EV charging in the home and being able to kind of coordinate that kind of load with, time of use or more innovative rates or elements like that. is an interesting sort of application there.
Great. Anyone else has any thoughts on just some of the specific use cases? Because we want to understand, how these technologies can be used, in the home to save energy.
Yeah, just building off of what Candace said about EVs. Obviously, I am also think thermostats are a great opportunity to save in the homes. Everybody has talked about that a lot. But on the EV side, I think there is a lot. I mean, it's obviously very early days. We don't have mass adoption, but we can start to plan now in a way that we didn't, I think. Sorry if you can hear that. It's just got really noisy. That we didn't with thermostats. And there's a lot of opportunity with time of use rates, especially those that are not whole home, that are really focused on the EV. So we have some programs right now where we're using the electric vehicle charger to figure out how much we can credit back customers for charging off peak. And kind of doing a lot of experimenting early on while the EV adoption curve is on the upswing, I think will be really helpful as people start adopting those en masse.
Okay, great. So it sounds like, how these devices will be, most beneficial then is in load shifting programs. The majority of you mentioned sort of load shifting versus, energy savings in and of itself. Like a lot of the initial promotion around smart appliances was around their ability to save energy. And same for the thermostats, it was about automating home energy savings based on, home and away applications and things like that. So it sounds like from your perspective, the biggest opportunity is with these devices is in shifting load versus actual energy savings. Am I sort of correct on that?
For the world as a whole, yes, I agree that that's where the biggest opportunity is.
Okay, wonderful. All right, so a lot of these use cases that you talk about, I know in our research, we're not seeing where there's a lot of adoption of energy programs in general, and smart devices and using them for energy savings and in energy management solutions in general. So I'm sure there are a lot of barriers that are definitely impacting this market. Certainly Mike talked earlier about providing education and just increasing that level of awareness. But what would you say are the primary barriers then that are preventing these solutions, including automated solutions, from gaining tractions and from consumers to adopt them more and just remain engaged with these types of programs? What are the barriers? And anyone can start if you have some thoughts.
I have some thoughts. I think listening to Hannah earlier, when she was talking about marketplaces and free thermostats and how that drives adoption, I think that that's true. So providing funding to customers and having more on the policy side, working on policies that give people tax incentives to adopt the right technology is great. But another problem is just the value of the services that those devices and customers can provide to the grid is not very clear yet, at least in like exact dollar terms. And that makes it really hard to get people to invest in building programs and growing resources because it's very hard to quantify. And so I hope that these sort of like cost effectiveness tests will evolve for more flexible grid services over time. And I think that will help drive adoption because there'll be more money for customers to put toward that.
I certainly agree. Better incentives. There are incentives being offered right now, but we know that adoption is still low. So we definitely need to either align those incentives with what consumers really want or just provide better incentives in general. So are there any other thoughts on what are the barriers, any different thoughts on the barriers holding, keeping these technologies out of homes or these solutions from, being used a lot?
Yeah, I would say there's a great opportunity to, in the new home and smart apartment developments that are coming through now, because one of the difficulties is installing and configuring all these devices and spending that money to purchase it. And builders can actually help adoption quite a bit. And so I would think that new home construction programs through utilities would be a wonderful way to drive adoption, because oftentimes the difficulty is installing and setting up the system and tuning it to save you energy in just the right ways. So I think that that they should enhance those programs and offer more device incentives so that the new homes that we build are all ready to go for the smart grid in the future.
I do agree with Steve on that. I think just in general, smart home platforms are getting more user friendly. I think there is still an element of intimidation in some segments about that, and then but it's getting better, and interoperability standards are going to help with that. I think those are all very positive developments. And to Erica's point, for a long time we were in a phase of very low energy prices, and we still are on a relative basis, but now they're starting to go up, and people are going to start becoming more focused on the actual impact to their wallet. So it's important to continue to educate and continue to provide the incentives to put these tools to work, and not only for the benefit of the grid, which is important, but also to their own pocketbooks.
All right. I'll also mention from experiences with our program that definitely it's not easy for consumers to grasp just load shifting in general, but use of the smart device itself. So for example, we're working with a pool of participants that actually opted into the program. So they wanted to receive the smart thermostat for free and wanted to go on a new rate. But there was just a significant amount of hand-holding that was required about, letting them know, to allow the thermostat to run schedules as opposed to kind of operating it like manually. So I think they were, we saw to a large extent there was a number of customers that they were used to, something being on only when they needed to use it. And then our concept actually deployed a pre-cooling approach, and it really wasn't naturally intuitive to some folks. So I think there was, at least on our part, we were maybe overestimating, folks' ability since they opted in and were engaged with this, that they needed that help to transition to that kind of mode of operating.
Yeah, certainly anything where we're looking to get mass market adoption, or we're trying to move beyond the technology innovators, as we call them, or early technology adopters, definitely support and making the experience as intuitive as possible is going to be helpful. So what do you all think will be the impact of utility marketplaces? We're talking about increasing awareness, certainly, as being one of the factors that are really going to drive adoption first and foremost. And we see that in our research as well, where adoption and participation in these programs is directly, very tightly connected to familiarity. So if we're seeing it to the point where if we see a slight increase in familiarity with one program, we automatically see an increase as well in the adoption of that program. So as we talk about that, I want to get a sense of, do you think the utility marketplaces are going to help to sort of drive the adoption and increase that awareness? Because a lot of times too, many customers, if they're not engaged with the energy provider in general, they won't even be aware that there is a marketplace. So what do you think will be the overarching impact of utility marketplaces?
They already have a pretty large impact on demand response programs. A few of the marketplaces have figured out how to work with DERMS providers to pre-enroll devices when they're purchased, and that can be a really great way to, back to our original point, as we stack incentives, the devices become more and more affordable. And so if you're able to stack those programs one on top of each other, it's a really compelling offer. And I think that some of the marketplace providers have done a really good job of marketing to customers outside of sort of the typical utility channels, like on, search and social. And so they're able to get to customers even customers who aren't engaged with their utility, as you said, are able to see the offers in the market when they're looking for these devices and act on them. So I think there's definitely a big opportunity. But there's also We need utilities to be a little bit more flexible in what the customer experience is in the marketplace. So today, like, there's the concept of opt-in or opt-out when you're purchasing a device. Should everyone just be automatically opted into a demand response program, or do we want people to check the box? And inevitably, if you opt everyone in with the ability to opt out, way more people sign up for the program. So we also need to test some of those kind of proven tactics outside of the utility world to really drive more adoption.
And certainly that has implications too for user experience with demand response programs and the utilities, because that's what we're seeing now. It just complaints all the times on support forums about people not knowing that they were a part of a demand response program until something gets turned off in their homes that they weren't anticipating. So certainly, even if we do that, we have to the communication around that has to be very strong.
I will say that I see a lot of that online, but we've got hundreds of thousands of customers enrolled in programs, and that is not the majority of support inquiries that we get. I think some of the stuff you see on support forums are also, like around the summer when Texas was having people were complaining a lot in Texas. Most of the complaints that we got were for people who weren't actually enrolled in programs. So there's a little bit of like hype around people complaining and then an actual what's really happening. So there's got to be a balance there.
Perfect.
Erica makes a great point, and I'll just kind of add on to that. But with utility marketplaces, the first big benefit is the integration at the point of sale for rebates through some of these platforms. Uplight has a platform like that some of the Exxon utilities use. I think the second thing that Erica pointed out about enrolling, at the point of sale and improving that user experience. I also think that, to your point, Patrice, to the extent that there are complaints, I think it's because the utilities don't communicate enough of the benefit, don't keep the customers informed, and so when they do have an event and the consumers are impacted, that they're aware of it, and that's important. And I think fundamentally that's because, and I think some utilities are doing this better than others, but the digital user experience, the bar shouldn't be what other utilities are doing. The bar should be what the other digital experiences that the consumer has in terms of how they're operating online. We shouldn't compare ourselves to each other. We should compare ourselves to other, best-in-class digital experiences, to make sure that the customer satisfaction, remains high.
Great.
I agree
James,
with
I
that.
wanted to chime in here.
Yeah, absolutely. So utility marketplaces is a phenomenal touch point if it's done right to educate customers. It really is. Let them know what they're signing up for, what to expect in the program, help guide them through the process when they get their thermostat, if there's any additional steps. Most manufacturers have got a pretty seamless process. I know we do for pre-enrolled thermostats. So when they arrive at the customer's home, they're already ready to go on the program when they are online, when they actually connect the thermostat to the internet. The other piece there, though, is we're starting to hit an inflection point where customers are a little on the edge of whether they want to take on the installation process. And as a thermostat manufacturer, we really focus on the installation procedure. But if someone's not comfortable, they're just not going to be comfortable. So taking that moment to offer free installation services, or with some concerns around people allowing tradesmen in their home to install maybe a kind of a guided tour on over WebEx, or not WebEx, but like a video chat to help a customer get the thermostat installed. We've seen a lot of really successful programs that are very creative to get the thermostats installed during this time in our lives. But I really think that what's going to be needed is to help bridge between online marketplaces, finding customers where they shop, and then also tying in the experience with tradesmen that are already in the customer's home. Because a lot of times folks think that their HVAC system is the brand of their thermostat. They don't know a whole lot about what's going on in the house. So making sure that you tie in that whole process from the tradesmen, the HVAC contractors, all the way through brick and mortar and marketplaces and education.
Great. Awesome. Thanks, James. So once again, I was getting sort of a lean towards the benefits of the utility marketplaces being towards the demand response programs and getting consumers to enroll into those programs. So let me move over to the digital engagement strategies, and we're talking about your apps. So with apps, it's right there with the customer all the time. They can get alerts about energy consumption in the home, whether or not it's going over maybe a budgeted amount, or it can provide some personalized recommendations in real time about how to save energy. If you're about to run your dishwasher, for example, you can get an alert on your phone or even pop up on another screen in the home to indicate that, if you ran the dishwasher at a later time, you would be able to save some money. So can we talk about the impact of digital engagement strategies and whether or not that would help to sort of drive adoption in energy management programs? Steve, I don't know if you had some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the app is a critical piece of the equation because we carry our phones around with us every day. And, we want to be made aware of what's happening. And, the typical smart home app, right, has the ability to notify you of things for certain. So demand response events would be a good example of that. But, SmartThings Energy is kind of taking it up a level beyond just, notifying you. You have the ability to really do a deep dive into how you use energy in your home. And in my particular case, I'd just gotten Samsung air conditioning in my home, and I was able to balance the comfort that I wanted to achieve in each different part of my house and automate it to achieve that without really thinking about it. And so, it's kind of interesting. On the one hand, our app is a way to enrich the experience. But once you set it up, you don't really need the app much because your home is going to be completely automated to respond to those events the way you've set it up to do so.
Wonderful. Candace, did you have any thoughts?
I do actually. So so from the utility perspective, we know that customers really, their touch point with their energy costs is usually through the printed utility bill. And that's just rather static and limits ways that we can engage with them on energy savings opportunities. So yeah, I mean, for Smart Home Rate program, we focused a lot on developing a digital My Account experience that brings brings them detailed information about their energy consumption as like the starting point. And then there's important mobile channels like text notifications, push notifications to the app that we also implemented for our Smart Home Rate event alerts. So I definitely think that pushing other mediums besides the static printed bill can really open up new worlds for customers and more effectively drive engagement on especially the opportunities for energy savings. It's still, I don't think we've gotten to the point where that's ubiquitous, but I would like to see that borne out as more customers catch on. And I guess as more customers are, they're on their phones a lot more, and they'll be getting their energy information primarily through digital channels.
But are you able to see any measurable change in energy consumption among those consumers who have adopted it?
That's an interesting point of research, and it's maybe a little bit too early to tell, but we'd be looking for that.
Yeah, that would sure be interesting. Mike, you had any thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with Steve and Candace. I mean, I think if that the app is a major point of engagement. I think we've seen tremendous benefits with respect to customer engagement when we combined our smart home controls with energy information and insights. And so the combination of those two was very helpful. I think, Steve mentioned, after if you actually are at a point where your home is optimized, your reliance on actually changing some of these things, is reduced. But, on the flip side, to Candace's point, having the ability to get notifications and to get insights and warnings, if you will, on whether it's a high bill warning or whether it's an HVAC problem. Those are all important things, and I think that the risk that we run as an industry is losing relevance in our customers' lives on a daily basis. People use their app. I don't know what the stats are offhand. You guys probably know better than me, but people are using apps and their phones all day long for all kinds of different things. Banking, reading the newspaper, all kinds of things like that. Energy needs to be up in that category of high usage apps, and so we need to continue to provide them with valuable information, insights, and control with respect to managing their energy goals and objectives.
Makes sense. Okay, wanting to get some insights on partnerships. A lot of you talked earlier about the fact that, it's really going to be the interaction between multiple or among multiple devices in the home that's really going to drive change in energy savings or help with energy management. And certainly we heard that come through in a lot of the earlier conversations too, that, it's coordination that's going to really provide value. And of course, if that's the case, then a lot of utilities are not going to be able to handle that on their own. So just wanting to get some insights on, how different partnerships can, or what kind of partnerships can help to drive some compelling value here.
I'll jump in real quick.
Sure.
So for the Sensi Smart thermostats, we've tried to integrate with the most important integrations in the home possible. So what customers are using. So we've got an integration with SmartThings, with Alexa, with the Google Hub. So we want to make sure that we're meeting customers where they are and what they use. Kind of back on the previous conversation, that the way you provide value in an app experience or in a connected home experience is to be valuable. It's always amazing to me when I go to use an app that I haven't used for a while. I have a setting that deletes the app on my phone. And it's amazing to me how many times I'm reinstalling an app because I'm not interacting with it. So if you have a situation where you're not meaningful enough with the integrations or the interactivity between other things in your home, that the customer has to reinstall the app every time they want to use it, you're not going to be relevant. So providing rich information and the integrations that people are coalescing around in the industry is really, really critical for the connected home experience.
Patrice, I think partnerships are key to the success in this. I think as an industry, or at least speaking from our perspective, we have to know what we're good at and what we're not good at. And we know we're good at providing energy. We know we're good at analyzing energy data and providing insights. But we're not an app company. We're not a smart home company. We're not an AI company. So we have key strategic partnerships. We work with Eslo Innovations on the smart home side. We work with, as I mentioned a couple of times, Grid4C on the AI side. We've developed an integrated app, with those partners to be able to provide that. So for me, I think partnerships are invaluable and key to our success as an industry.
Great. Thanks, Mike. So I want to touch on demand response first. We have a lot of questions coming in from the audience, but I do want to give everyone a chance to talk about demand response. And we talked about it earlier too. We had Drew from CPS Energy just talking about, their success in the space and some of the things that they were doing different, and they've seen, enormous growth. So, but I mean, our data is saying, something a little bit different where we're not seeing that adoption number growing. In fact, it has been, largely consistent for the past 4 years or so. So I just want to get your thoughts, and Erica, you can chime in here on, where are these programs stumbling, or where have they stumbled in the past, and what is it that we need to do where demand response programs are concerned to get consumers more engaged, and even after we get them engaged, to sort of keep them engaged with these programs?
Yeah, so I would say we are still seeing really great growth in all of our demand response programs. We have clients that are committing to, enroll similar to CPS size programs to enroll that many customers, but strictly in bring your own device. And I mean, the CPS stuff is also switches and direct install thermostats. So I think there's still huge opportunity. The growth has been really good. I think the thing that a lot of utilities are doing right is kind of pulling all the pieces together. So not just relying on partner marketing, which would be, something Nestor Emerson does on their own to recruit customers, but then supplementing that with emails from the utility, potentially direct mail, marketplaces, working with us to do search and social campaigns. Basically, like employing all the channels to James's earlier point, meeting the customer where they are is really important. And I think utilities were pretty hands off. There were two types of utilities. Either they were really hands off and just relied on us and the partner to do the work, or they wanted to do it all themselves. And that doesn't work either. And so it really has to be a partnership of utilities, device providers, customers, and the DERMS folks to really fuel those programs.
So is there any different messaging that's working now, or anything that you're seeing in particular that's really moved the needle in the space?
Incentives are the thing that really moves the needle, but what we have found is comfort and convenience are the things to really focus on. We're not going to disrupt your life. We'll make sure you stay comfortable. We employ lots of strategies around making those things true. But, at the end of the day, I think it's the incentive that both why the customer rolls and why they stay. I do think with all of the extreme weather that we've had and the focus of lots of utilities on climate change, that we are seeing more customers interested in that messaging, but I don't think it's the thing that, like the number one thing that propels them to join.
Got it. Good insight. All right, let me shift on over here to these audience questions. Okay, this is a long one, so I'm going to do my best to get through it quickly. Okay, it says, with the increase of high efficiency, variable speed HVAC equipment being deployed in the market, how will traditional smart thermostats include them in DR programs while still ensuring they operate at maximum efficiency? I think James would probably want to jump in on that.
Yeah, so that's a great question, and it's something that comes up quite often with variable speed equipment. Smart thermostats, traditional 24-volt smart thermostats like an Emerson Sensi or even Nest Ecobee, they don't work. The thermostats are proprietary to the system, and you can't control the super high efficiency systems. Also, the systems modulate throughout the day, so they're very seldomly on at full load. So it's a little difficult, and this has been something that I've experienced for years in my career, long before joining Emerson, where we were trying to control similar types of equipment in a demand response program that used load controls before the kind of evolution of smart thermostats.
Great, thanks. Lots of really technical questions here, and I think you might be good for this one too, James. It says, what about homes retrofitted with multiple mini split AC heat pumps? How easily can those customers participate in energy programs with smart thermostats?
Okay. So similar to my last response, the most mini split air conditionings that they use remotes like a RF type of remote. So think of your TV remote and not smart thermostats. So you can incorporate wired 24-volt thermostats into those applications unless you use a device that will actually translate the call from the thermostat to those mini splits. And when you do that, you limit the inherent ability to do some of the most interesting features of that technology. So it's very limiting.
Got it. Okay, this one is for Candace. Okay, so it says, do multifamily brownstone type buildings common in the NYC area produce any unique challenges that you're aware of?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's, I guess, multiple ways to answer this question. But I mean, we are in a very dense area in New York City. So a lot of the I guess the assumptions that apply to less dense areas where single family homes prevail just don't apply in New York City. So there's like for brownstones, they're older building stock. They don't have, ducted AC built in usually. There's also a good chance that, there's units that are rented out. So those are all, unique, I guess, variables that we do often come across in our service territory. And actually, for the smart home rate project that I've talked most about, we've actually focused on single family homes for actually some of those reasons, because it was very complicated. And different programs would have to address like kind of different residential segments, as you point out.
Right. Awesome. Anyone else have any thoughts on how those different building types and, being in such a dense area will affect, these programs?
Well, I mean, I could say that, with retrofit projects, existing home stock, wireless smart home technologies are a really good fit for that. You don't have to run wires throughout the building to do everything. And similarly, in renovation projects, typically mini split type ductless systems are easier to retrofit into those buildings. So there's things we can do to impact that. And in the case of smart things, you could deploy smart things in one of those buildings and a Samsung heat pump mini split system. And all of that would be connectable and controllable by the utility because of smart things.
Great. All right. Thank you for that. So we had a very engaged audience with lots of technical questions, but that is where we'll have to end it. We are right up on our time. So I really want to thank each and every one of you for those really good insights. You've certainly helped to shed some new light on the space. So thank you so much for your participation. And I want to thank the audience as well for their participation in this panel. A few notices before we close out. Coming up next, and I'll just wait for my slides to go up on the screen here. Coming up next, we will have our networking discussion via Zoom. And we ask you to go ahead and join us for that. There should be a link on your agenda page for the networking discussion. So it's an easy hop on over into Zoom, and we invite all speakers to come and join us for that discussion there. Then just to remind you that we hope to see you at next year's events. So please watch for announcements coming on or plans for these virtual sessions and in-person sessions during next year in 2022. A big thank you once again to our event sponsors for their support throughout 2021. And if you would like to get involved in next year's events, please contact Ashton today. Her contact information is there on the slide. It's easy to reach. And just to let you know that we have a lot of newly published research on the smart apartment market, both looking at it from the property manager's view as well as from the resident view. So please contact our team if you'd like any more information on that. We are also regularly producing studies that address energy management in the home. So please contact Jason Paris or any other member of our sales team if you'd like any more insight on our energy research. Once again, a big thank you for your attendance and participation, and please join us over in the networking discussion on Zoom.